Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Rakhi Pancholi. I'm the Alberta NDP Education Critic and the MLA for Edmonton Whitemud. I'm joined today by Dustin Horlacher, whose 10-year-old son Carson will be starting grade 5 and 7-year-old son Kipton will be starting grade 3 in just a couple days. You'll hear from Dustin shortly and the challenges they have with an overcrowded school. We're gathered on the territory of Treaty 7, and I'd also like to recognize the Métis people who share a deep connection with this land. So it is that time of year again, back to school for thousands of Alberta children, teachers, and school staff. It's a time of great anticipation, of excitement, and yes, of course, of some nerves as well. In my household, just like those all across the province, it's always a bit frantic as we prepare our two kids for school. Public education is a big part of the reason why I ran for public office. Ensuring that every child receives a high-quality, relevant, inclusive education in a school where they feel safe and supported is so important to shaping the people that they will become one day. And it's also important to building stronger families, communities, and our economy. I am passionate about education, just like all parents are. And I think many Alberta parents are concerned about the state of education in our province right now, and for good reason. For 4 years, the UCP government has dramatically underfunded education. This was the case even while the number of students in Alberta grew every single year. The cost of inflation hit our school system hard, and the complexity of students' needs in classrooms increased. In fact, the Alberta Teachers Association released information from Statistics Canada that makes it clear that Alberta's per student funding is the lowest in all of Canada. The problem is getting worse too, with more than half of Alberta teachers reporting class sizes that were larger than the year before. This is the highest rate in the country. In my own constituency, I've already heard from schools that I should expect many letters from parents in September once they realize how big their children's classrooms are. I think a lot of Alberta parents are in for a shock this school year when they find out how many students are going to be in their child's classrooms. And if you're a parent in Calgary, Edmonton, Airdrie, or any of the growing communities around this province, you might also be shocked to know that the UCP is not providing full funding to your child this school year. No, in communities where student enrollment increases every year, the UCP's weighted moving average funding model means funding will always fall behind the number of students that are actually enrolled in the school system. Every Alberta student, every single student, deserves to be fully funded the moment they enter the classroom. The Alberta NDP knows that every child's education is important, no matter where they live. Unfortunately, that is simply not the case in Alberta right now. After 4 years of the UCP refusing to build enough schools and fund education properly, Alberta schools are short of teachers, support staff, and space. And Albertans have seen what happens when the UCP politicizes the curriculum. What students learn in school is far too important to be decided by politicians. Curriculum must be developed by experts and teachers. The Minister of Education must come out and clearly commit to Albertans that he will correct the mistakes of his previous government. Future curriculum development must be done by a process that is depoliticized and includes teachers, parents, and students. And implementation of that new curriculum must be resourced and sequenced properly in a way that makes sure teachers and students are set up for success. In the recent election campaign, the Alberta NDP ran on a commitment to hire 4,000 additional teachers over 4 years. Desperately needed to bring down class sizes. Only weeks after the election, Danielle Smith dropped her promise to Albertans to hire 650 teachers and 1,375 educational assistants and replaced it with some vague language in the Education Minister's mandate letter around, quote, exploring incentives, end quote. But teacher retention is equally important. And that begins with making sure teachers know their work and professionalism is valued and respected. So the UCP will need to do a complete 180 on the approach it's taken to teachers over the last 4 years. And absolutely key to bringing down class sizes is making up for the failure of the UCP to fund the construction of enough schools in our province. The Alberta NDP committed to building 120 new desperately needed schools in growing communities right across Alberta, and specifically here in Airdrie and in Calgary, where the government is building only one new school, despite thousands more students enrolling every year. We also said that we would restore PUF funding for our youngest students with special needs, and we would expand the school nutrition program, and we would do more to support student mental health. And I'm here to say that we will not let up in advocating for all these critically important measures to support your child's education. A new school year is beginning, and my friends, I want Alberta parents, teachers, and students to know that rebuilding our public education system is our top priority. We will be pushing for smaller class sizes, better funding for students, new schools, and more. Because education is critical to our future of the province. But even more importantly, it's critical to our kids. The decisions we make today will impact them for the rest of their lives. Let's make the right decisions. Thank you, and I'll now turn things over to Dustin.
Thank you, Rakhi. As you said, our boys go to school here in Airdrie. Getting ready for school is a great time of year. It's very exciting, but also met with a little bit of apprehension and a little bit of nervousness. We have two boys, Kipton, who's getting ready to take on grade 3, and Carson, who's getting ready to take on grade 5. Recently, we moved to a new house, which we chose close to our old neighborhood so that we could keep our boys in the same school. It's very important for us to have our boys in the same school, as Kipton is one of Carson's greatest supports. However, their school's at 110% capacity, so it was a little bit of a challenge to keep him there. Carson has ADHD and ASD. Unfortunately for Carson and his classmates, thousands of other students, there's just not enough staff to adequately support our kids. Kipton is Carson's only constant support in the school. It's a lot for a 7-year-old to take on, but luckily he's just the kind of kid at his young age that loves to do that. If it wasn't for Kipton, I'm afraid to think about what school would be like for Carson. It's especially important now that there's not enough educational assistants in the class. School's already stretched to the max, yet teachers are exposed or expected to take on so much more. Carson is very verbal and a little bit of a whirling dervish in class. He often needs a little bit of extra support and a little bit of help to help him pay attention and not disrupt the other class. I really don't know how any teacher copes with a class of 28 kids. Where Carson's teacher might have to stop multiple times throughout the class to redirect Carson, and that ultimately disrupts the class. He's a curious boy who loves school, but he can get bored and disinterested very, very quickly. It's also heartbreaking that for us, every day we send Carson to school with a lunch, but there's nobody to sit down and help him eat it. He often goes home with an uneaten lunch almost every day. An educational assistant would take the strain off of the teacher, not only addressing a few of Carson's needs and perhaps ensuring he eats his lunch, but also by supporting the other 27 students in the class. Also, as we begin a new year in a new grade, I think it would be great for him to have a little extra support in helping with these transitions. Change is always a struggle for Carson, and also a challenge anytime a substitute teacher comes into the class. I think an assistant might help bridge the gap in helping support the substitute teacher so they don't need a manual to get through the day. Because sometimes even the slightest change to routine can be too much for Carson and students like him. I honestly have no idea how teachers can do what they do, and I applaud them all for doing it, and I can't thank them enough for doing it. It takes a special kind of person to teach our kids. I truly hope we can get them the support they need and deserve so they can all help the children be as successful as possible. Our children and teachers just deserve better.
Thank you, Dustin, and thank you for sharing your family's story and Carson's story and the impact of overcrowded classrooms and not enough supports. It really does affect families just like Dustin's, but kids across this province. It's part of a severe problem that many growing communities are facing right now of overcrowding and underfunding under the UCP government for the last 4 years. Just last month, Rocky View School District wrote to Minister Nicolaides to say many of the district schools are already over capacity, that students and teachers are being negatively impacted as a result, and that situation is rapidly becoming worse. Quote, "Our students, teachers, and parents and guardians are understandably frustrated and concerned by this ongoing situation. We've been raising the alarm about our student space challenges with the government for several years." End quote. What's more, the letter notes that the UCP's new funding formula means that more than 800 students will enter overcrowded Rocky View schools this year without a penny of funding from the province. We can see these problems in growing communities right across Alberta, and it's making life harder for families like Dustin's. Thank you, and we're happy to take your questions.
All right, thank you, Rakhi, and thank you, Dustin. We'll now go to questions. First, we'll check to see if there's any questions in person.
Marco Palomino, City View, Airdrie. Could you share your perspectives on the current challenges and opportunities?
Sorry, I'm having a little
within-
trouble hearing you. Would you mind? Sorry, just because of the
Yeah,
wind.
sorry. Could you share your perspectives on the current challenges and opportunities within the education system? You talked about staff charges and disability children, like they're struggling right now. What are opportunities do you see with this landscape? And the second question is, what are some key initiatives that need to be prioritized?
Thank you for those questions. So in terms of what we're seeing right now in the school system and the key challenges and opportunities, as we've said, like 4 years of progressively less education funding, even while we have more students in our schools, has meant that those dollars are being spread very thin. And what we've also seen that a lot of the supports that we used to have in classrooms, we've lost a number of educational assistants in many schools. Many of them were let go during the pandemic and they were not hired back. So kids who have need more support are just not getting it right now. And that actually impacts not just those kids, but it actually impacts the entire classroom. As Dustin was saying, you know, when his child needs a little bit of extra support, it does mean that the other kids, the teacher's only one teacher in the classroom, right? So the teacher can't manage all those needs. And we've also heard consistently from school boards across the province that these classrooms are becoming more complex. So mental health challenges are raised significantly, as well as, you know, just needing more of those additional supports to make up for learning loss. What this means is that we can't really make up now at this point for the deficit that has been created over the last 4 years by the UCP underfunding our school system and ensuring that we have fewer supports in the classrooms. In some respects, they need to do it, a rapid infusion and show a really strong commitment to investing in education immediately. So we've seen that, yes, Budget 2023 increases dollars a little bit, but it doesn't make up for the number of new students that are there and the higher complexity of the school system. So we need to see a big influx of dollars right now. And as Rocky View School District has said, they are very short on school space. Rocky View is not the only school district that's in that position. Edmonton Public has stated it over and over, as has all the surrounding communities in Calgary as well. So what we need is not just a commitment to design funding or pre-planning funding, which is what we've seen from this government. What we need to see is a commitment to construction, to actually building those schools as fast as possible. We are already 4 years behind, and our schools and our students can't wait any longer. So the opportunity here is for a new minister of this government to step forward and show that he's going to do things completely differently than his predecessor and completely differently than the 4 years of government that we've seen so far. That is going to be a challenge. Minister Nicolaides was, of course, the minister that was responsible for devastating the post-secondary system in Alberta. So I am concerned about what he's going to do to our education system. But the opportunity here is to be different than the UCP has been on their track record, to really do something completely different. And that's where we'd like to see that priorities in terms of student funding, getting staff into school, to classrooms, both support staff and teachers, but also committing to building new schools.
Anything further in person? All right, we'll go to the phones. Just a reminder for those joining us on the phone to use *9, and for those joining us on Zoom to use the raise hand function to get into the question queue. Our first question goes to Catherine Gagowski from Alberta Today. Go ahead, Catherine, your line is open.
Hi there. So you mentioned the mandate letter, and part of that is continuing to implement additional educational assistance to address learning loss and increasing complexity, and as well $5 million for assessment of some of these complex needs for students. I'm wondering why do you think this is in the letter but you're not seeing it this school year?
Well, I think that's a very good question as to why there seems to be some, words on paper that suggest that the ministry and the premier are going to start to address the complexities of Alberta classrooms, but we have to see actual delivery of change. And you know, again, there is some new dollars associated or a slight increase in the education budget, but it doesn't even come close to make up for what has been done over the last 4 years. So, you know, again, we're going to have to wait to see what Minister Nicolaides does, but school starts in many areas of the province today. School starts tomorrow. By Tuesday, almost all school districts in the province, kids will be in classes, teachers will be in classes. Parents are going to find out firsthand how many kids are in their child's classroom. That's when I start to expect to hear from a lot of Albertans when they tell us about the sizes of those classes. So Minister Nicolaides should have been doing work over this summer to really make sure that there was strong strong investments to ensure that supports are there for the classrooms that need it, and that EAs are there. Instead, if we think about it, I mean, the last 4 years, the UCP has taken an approach of really denigrating the work of school professionals, of teachers, and that has really had an impact on retention and attracting new people into this work. So when we have a shortage of teachers, we have a shortage of EAs, we also have a government that's been telling them that their work is not valuable and respected. So we need to see an attitude change, we need to see an impact of dollars right away, and it's already, we're falling behind because school is starting right now.
Do you have a follow-up, Catherine?
And well, yeah, you mentioned that sort of retention. If there was that change in attitude, would there be enough staff to meet these needs, or does something else need to happen, whether that's faster training, or what needs to happen to fill those gaps today?
Well, you know, actually retention is a key part of, I think, addressing the challenges in the teaching workforce. I've been spending some time talking to various education stakeholders and actually just being in the schools in my riding and talking to teachers. And we know that they're feeling burnt out, they're feeling underappreciated, they're feeling unvalued. And so making them feel like that the work they do is as important as we know it is really key. So retention is important. I don't know that it's about fast tracking credentials or programs. What we do know is that teachers are professionals, and we expect them to be trained to do the important work that they're doing, and even more so now that classrooms are more complex. What we need to do is start with an attitude change, but we also need to make sure that we are, that we are making teaching a profession that people want to go into. Look, there's shortages across many sectors right now. If we want people to go into the profession of teaching, we have to tell them that they're going to be valued and respected in doing that work. And even if we had all the staff that we needed, we are far behind on school space. And that's just a reality. We can hire teachers, but I know that there are many schools across this province that are well over capacity. So we are behind on building the schools we need to put those new teachers into those classrooms to make sure class sizes are smaller.
Anything further, Catherine? And we'll do one more pass for questions on the phone. Just a reminder for star 9 on the phones and raise hand for the Zoom. And with no further questions, we'll wrap today. Thanks, folks.